So I had worked at the animal hospital for 2.5 years, and at that time I was getting. Oh, Carrie's up. Hold on. Carrie Berry heard me talking, and she was sleeping. Her and Greg went to bed, and she heard me talking, and she got startled. So that's why she started barking. But anyway, so I worked at the animal hospital for about 2.5 years. And during that time, I started becoming friends with people that were in the alternative community, punk rock, and all that. And I was going to a lot of concerts and wearing a lot of black. And I started drinking more, but I was working at this time too. So after I left the animal hospital, I went to work at a pet store. And I'm not sure how long I was at the pet store. I wasn't happy there, although I did become good friends with a baby bird that I had raised. I had raised him from the time he was born until I left there. And I was so sad that I had to leave him. That was what I was saddest most about when I left the place. When I left the pet store. From the pet store, I started working at a daycare center, and I was at the daycare center 2 years. And during that time, I began dating. A boy named Ryan, and he was 19 and I was 20. And I was crazy about him, and there's like a strong like electric connection between us. We're like super connected, and this is a really hard time to talk about. So I was working at the daycare, and I was going to school, and I was dating Ryan. And Ryan and I were pretty serious, and we ended up having a baby together. And I went and lived with him and his parents at his house for a while. I started getting really sick again, and I thought that they were out to get me and were against me and were gonna hurt me and my baby. And I started wigging out. I flipped out on Ryan one night for no reason, other than I was paranoid and scared. And I ended up leaving, and this is why I was pregnant. My parents helped me get an apartment, and I was in an apartment before that by myself. Before I moved in with Ryan and his family, I was in an apartment by myself for a while. And so I got an apartment, and I was living in an apartment by myself, and I was getting sicker and sicker. And when I delivered Anna, that was my daughter's name, I was in a psychosis at the time I delivered her. My dad was the only one that was there with me. And anyway, I had Anna for 9 months. I had her for 9 months in my apartment with me. But I was so sick. I was so sick during that time. I was like chipping the paint off the walls because I thought there were listening devices and recording devices under the paint. And I was ripping stuffed animals open because I thought there were recording devices in the stuffed animals. My adoptive mom had tried to help me, But she had just been in a really bad car accident, and she wasn't able to help me as much as she probably would have liked to. And um, my adoptive mom ended up getting the paperwork for me to give my daughter up for adoption. I kept telling her I didn't want to give her up for adoption. I didn't want to give her up for adoption at all. I never had intended of giving her up for adoption. I was super sick. I couldn't take care of her, and um, actually she was in danger by being taken care of by me because I couldn't even take care of myself. My mom was with me a lot of the times during when I was sick. When I had Anna, Anna ended up going to a place it was like a foster home. It wasn't a foster home, but this couple were watching her until my mom did everything as far as with the adoption. I didn't have anything to do with getting the adoption rolling. And it was when I ended up going into the psychiatric hospital when Anna was a baby. And when I was in the hospital, that was when I signed my rights away. I wasn't even in my right frame of mind when I signed my rights away. And Ryan was there, and he was so angry. He didn't want to give her up either. I especially didn't want him because I was adopted myself, and I didn't want to give my daughter up for adoption. It's just so hard for me. Okay, I needed to stop. So after the adoption went through, so Anna went to live with two very loving parents. And let me just go slow. So after the adoption went through, Anna was adopted by two loving Christian parents, Catholic parents, and at the time they had another daughter who they had adopted that was older than Anna. And I ended up going to live in an apartment where it was like an apartment living program. I lived in this apartment and I got discounted rent, but in return I needed to go to these counseling groups every week, and I was so depressed. I mean, I went into a deep depression. I'm not gonna cry. I went into a really deep depression after giving her up for adoption. I mean, it was really bad. It took a while for me to get out of it. And the people at the apartment living program were so nice. The counselors were so nice. There was even one counselor who everyone said we looked alike. Her name was Lori, and everyone said we looked alike. And she actually took me to a Billy Joel concert, and that was so nice of her. It was like awesome. We had a good time. I think they were trying to help me, and so I attended the groups while I was there, the counseling groups, and every Thursday they had a thing where you'd go there and you'd eat and you'd have a meal and you'd socialize. There was a lot of was a very social community. I met a lot of great people there. Some really I'm sorry. So I met some really wonderful people there. I I started going to school. I started going back to school again. Um, I was going to community college. I was going for art education, and after a while there, while I was there, I started seeing a guy named a guy named Scott, and we also ended up having a baby. And I also gave her up for adoption, and she went. And we had a little girl, and I named her Alyssa Christine, and she ended up living with Anna and Anna's parents, and they're still together today. Their parents were very good parents. And when I was pregnant with Alyssa, at the beginning of my pregnancy, I was being pushed by some of the counselors to have an abortion, and it had always gone against my faith, my belief, and but I was so confused. I didn't know what to do, and I actually went to the clinic, and I was gonna have an abortion, but I was so upset. I saw a mom sitting there with her baby, with her young toddler, and I just broke down, and I actually talked to the woman at the abortion clinic, and she said, she said maybe, because I was so upset, she said maybe you need to think about this more or something. So I ended up leaving, and I didn't have an abortion. Thank God. Thank Jesus. Praise the Lord. And praise the Lord for getting me out of there. And now Anna and Alyssa, they changed her name to Caitlin, but Anna and Alyssa, they ended up having children of their own. So technically I'm a grandma, but I don't see them, and I don't see their kids, so I'm not a participating grandma in their lives. So after and with Caitlin, she was given up right at birth. I didn't have any support, and I didn't think there was any way I could take care of her, not by myself. Scott wasn't anywhere around, and he wasn't working anyway, or he had some mental health problems himself, and I wasn't very nice to him. It was actually when I was dating him, I started getting into meth, and I started getting into meth with him. I never did meth when I was pregnant with Caitlin, never. But before I got pregnant, I started doing a lot of meth, and then I was still friends with Greg at this time, but we weren't serious or anything. We were just friends, and he had told me at one point, he had told me if I ever did meth again, he wouldn't be my friend, and I just quit like that, like cold turkey. I don't know if it was easy for me to quit because I was still smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol, or just the grace of God. Um, but yeah, so I never looked back. I never touched that shit again. Thank God. Things could went a lot worse with that. And then, like, after giving Caitlin up for adoption, um, Greg and I had started dating at some point. When Greg was in the Marine Corps, and when he got out of the Marine Corps, he came to see me because we were friends. We were friends for since I was 14. He was 16, and now I'm 53 and he's 55. And so he was a good friend to me, even when I was even when I had Anna, he'd come over, and at this point nothing had ever happened between us. But he was just a good friend. He was a good guy. Still is a good guy. And he would bring me like Burger King, and he was just very kind to me. And he didn't want anything either. Not like most of the guys I knew. But we were just genuine good friends. And so after he got out of the military, he came to my apartment, and we started hanging out together. And then we started getting a little more serious. And when we ended up getting engaged, and we were engaged for a long time. I think we were engaged for like 6-7 years. Yeah, we were engaged for quite a while before we actually got married. He was going to school. He went to school for computer information systems, and right now he actually is a superintendent at a air conditioning company that works on like huge buildings. And he's worked there. I think this year is going to be 32 years. So he's been there. He's been at the same company for a long time. I hate my hair. I hate it. I chopped it off, and I hate it. It's awful. So there's nothing. Sometimes it looks okay, but it's so short. But it's just hair. It'll grow back. So Greg and I got married. We actually got married in 2001, September 22nd, 2001. It was 11 days after 9/11 is when we got married. And we already had the wedding planned. We didn't know 9/11 was going to happen. We had planned our date a long time ago. And people actually still flew in, surprisingly, for the wedding. So thank you to those of you who did. I probably wouldn't have. I mean, so thank you so much. And it was a beautiful wedding, and it was a beautiful day. And we went to we went to Colorado. We live in Arizona, and we drove 13 hours to Estes Park, Colorado. And it was beautiful. We had a wonderful time there, and we stayed in like a really nice cabin, and there was even a jacuzzi out in the back, a heated jacuzzi on the porch or deck, the deck. So that was nice. We spent a lot of time in there, just chilling and smoking our cigarettes, drinking our beer. So we were young still. Not that young though, because I was 29 and he was 31. So we weren't that young. But we still hadn't grown up yet. If you know what I mean. So yeah, we had a wonderful time in Estes Park, Colorado. But as the end of our honeymoon drew near, my period had started, and I ended up becoming really bitchy and just not nice. So, but it didn't ruin the honeymoon because we still had a wonderful time. But I just remember that I was a little, a little grumpy towards the end. Uh, so, so we headed back home after when we were in Estes Park. We went to the Rocky Mountains, and oh god, we drove up the Rocky Mountains. Is that what I think that's what it was called? The Rocky Mountains. We drove up there. You could hear the what were they, like goats or I think there's some kind of goats that you could hear them calling, like making mating calls while you're there. It was a hairy, windy road, and it was scary at sometimes. Greg was he was just doing the driving, but it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. Estes Park is a gorgeous place, and we walked around at the shops, and and outside our outside of our cabin was a little creek, and one morning we were eating breakfast at this wooden table in the kitchen. It was a big wooden table, and there's a big picture window, and there was a mama deer and a baby deer, and it was so cool. I remember that. And we barbecued on the grill. They had a grill on the patio one night. We barbecued and we cooked way too much chicken. We were eating chicken the whole time we were there. A chicken. I think we had some steaks too. And we saw a show, like a cowboy show, while we were there, and walked around the shops, and it was a beautiful time. Oh, and there were moose. There were moose everywhere. There were moose in people's yards. It was crazy. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then we came home, and then we started living life as a married couple. And at the time we were living in my apartment, because I had an apartment at this time, and we were living in my apartment. But shortly after we got married, we went and lived in my brother's girlfriend's rental house, and we lived there for a couple of years. We actually had our daughter. And when we had our daughter, we were living in that rental house, and it was not in a nice neighborhood. It was a terrible neighborhood that we were living in. So I'm grateful we got out of there. And wow, the first part of our marriage was very tumultuous. It was very tumultuous. I had untreated schizoaffective disorder, and we were drinking, and we had some pretty serious fights during that time. Some pretty serious fights and arguments, and so I think I'm gonna stop here. So I'm stopping at where we got married 2 weeks or 11 days after 9/11, and then when I was 31 and Greg was 33, we ended up having our daughter, our beautiful daughter, Lily. And and we were living at the rental house when we had her. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'll continue another time. So have a beautiful night, and I hope you're enjoying hearing about my life, and I hope it's not too much of a downer. I don't want it to be a downer. I just want to share. I'm not in the same place I was then. I'm doing so much better than I was, all those years ago. Praise Jesus for that. And, so I'm grateful to be where I am today, where my family is today. And, I'm grateful for all of you for being here. So have a beautiful night. Talk to you later. Bye.